still a little bit in the infancy stage, and we're not really doing the closed-loop marketing. And again, what we're going to be talking about today is how to create that closed-loop engagement cycle so that we can really deliver a personalized experience. So relevancy, personalization, and intimacy delivers customer relationships. It helps us acquire customers, retain customers, and for existing customers to cross-sell and upsell. So we've seen B2C personalization. Actually, Amazon has been the leader in this space for many years, and they really exemplify personalization at its best. And you can tell here from my Amazon page, I have kids. Basically, it says it comes in, it makes recommendations based on my historical click stream within the website. But now personalization has really become commoditized, and now it's becoming much easier for all companies to deliver advanced experiences in their digital world. So personalization does matter. The more effective you are at delivering the content, the relevant content, the more likely you are to turn that visitor into a lead. So content that matters in real time makes them take notice. The less time a user spends searching on your site, the closer they are to converting. And when you align the data to the customer's expectations, you're leading them down the path to conversion. It's like when you walk into a clothing store, they say, "Hi, Val." They know your size, they know your color, and they deliver it to you. And it's exactly what you were looking for. So you're in and out of the store, and you're upsold while you're in the store shopping. So what some stats are, to throw some stats your way, is the average B2B buyer is 70% of the way through their buying cycle before they even speak to a sales rep. They've done their research online. They've gone to the forums. They've gone to their social media channels. They've done their research before they actually speak to a sales rep. In the e-commerce world, personalized e-commerce sites statistically are known to increase conversions by 70%. Again, if we're able to provide visitors with something that's personal and relevant, they're much more likely to make the purchase. But what's going on in the marketplace is when Jan Rain and Blue Research did some research, they found that half the time companies send communications or promotions that are irrelevant. 41% say frequently, and 9% say all the time. And with today's technology and today's capability, it shouldn't be happening. We should be sending information to our website visitors or our email receivers or any digital form. We should be delivering them more personalized, relevant information. So another way to look at this is not just in the web world. Another way to look at it is the integrated view across multiple channels. So what comprises an integrated view? So when you look at it, when you call the call center takes notes on your conversation. When you go online, your clicks are tracked. When you go to multiple websites, you get cookied so that information travels with you. Your search behavior is tracked. Even in the in-store, because it's digital, you're using your credit card, there's the ability to track the in-store behavior. And when you're mobile, when you're checking in, or you're going on Foursquare or using check-in on Facebook, it's tracking you from a geo perspective. And then, of course, from a social media perspective, it shows you can track your social media behavior. So how do you identify the right context or the right information to deliver to your site visitor? So there are three different means: implicit, external, and explicit information. So when you go to a website for the first time, the website automatically knows a bunch of information about you. So that's the implicit information, or is what we're calling is the digital footprint that the visitor has left on their site. So for example, when you're on the site, we can track where you're clicking, where you're going. And we can understand what your interests are, whether or not you clicked on save money or make money. We know what you're looking for by what you're typing in the on-site search bar. We know whether or not you're the first-time visitor to the site or the second-time visitor. We know how much time you spend on the site. So all of that information really drives a lot of information and really helps determine what your buying behavior is or what stage of your buying behavior that you are. Some external information that's captured by external providers that you can bring into your website are things like your location. There's IP detect. Google knows whether or not you live in Toronto or New York or Manhattan. It can track your IP down now to a very, very close level, so you're able to determine the region that somebody is living. You know where they came from and where they left, when they left your site, where they're going. You know what search terms they click on in Google before they get to your site, or what search engine ads you clicked on. Then there's explicit information about your behavior on the site. And this is where the information gets extra valuable, is when you download a white paper, you answer a poll, or you fill in a quiz. So for example, if you have a valuable white paper on your site, users will provide their email address, their first name, last name. You've captured that data. It now becomes a warm lead. The last form of explicit information is the information supplied by the visitor when they log in with their social login ID. I'm going to pass it over to Bill now, and he'll talk about JanRain's capability of capturing the social login ID.
Thank you, Valerie. I mean, as you've mentioned, there really are a number of ways companies can collect the explicit information from their consumers, including the traditional registration forms. You know, people today registered for this webinar with a registration form, or as you said, you've got gated content like a white paper, or just sites that want you to register so they can offer up additional content. But there are some problems with traditional registration, and I think it all starts with what the industry would call password fatigue. As consumers, each one of us have been presented with far, far too many different opportunities to create unique username and passwords. And there's some real downsides to that. The first of which is we can't, as humans, remember all those different username and password combinations. So we either are continually asking or clicking on the forgot username, forgot password, or as some research that we did in January shows, often either when we're returning to a site that's presenting us with a registration form or a sign-in, either we're returning or for the first time, 86% of us have admitted that we're very likely to leave the site in question. And you think about it from a marketing perspective, and it's like inviting somebody to your door and you've got them there on your front porch, and then they turn around and leave. It's a huge wasted opportunity. You know, the second part of it is those people who decide to come in to your home, but they're coming in under false pretenses. So you can, as marketing people, I'm sure we've all seen the Mickey Mouse at Disney.com or the no spam at don'tcallme.com records in our database. And clearly, if our goal is to create an engaging experience where we can begin to foster and maintain a meaningful, valuable relationship and provide an engaging experience for the people who are coming in, if they're coming in under false pretenses, we've lost that opportunity to present that kind of experience for them. We see social login as an answer to this. For those of you online who may be unfamiliar with social login, it's very simple. It gives you the opportunity as a user to, instead of creating a unique new username and password that you may forget at some point, to use an existing identification for a social network where you already have a presence. So, for instance, Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. And there are some immediate benefits that accrue to any company that offers social login to their users. The first of which is that's what consumers are beginning to show preference for. The same research that I just referenced showed in January that 77% of consumers prefer to be offered the option for social login. Interestingly, that was up 10% in just 9 months from the previous time that we had run this research. The second part of it is your support costs go down because your support personnel no longer have to worry about answering the forgot or lost username or passwords. And from a security perspective, getting back to the whole problem of password fatigue, what's happened is many of us, and I bet many of you would include yourself in this, instead of trying to come up with a unique username or password, are beginning to reuse the same ones because you just don't have the capacity to remember all those different combinations any longer. The security and privacy issue there, though, is obviously you're at risk if one site gets hacked and your username and password are exposed, you now are potentially exposed across every other site where you've ever used that. By using a social login, you now don't have to worry about that. As a brand, you're not worried about protecting the username and password because that's being done by these large companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera. But those benefits are just the beginning. The conversion rates go up. We've seen customers of 30% or higher conversion rates, so the acquisition of known users from anonymous visitors goes way up. We've seen it in social commerce where cart abandonment is reduced because people are able to use their existing identities. But as super important and valuable as that is, and as a marketer, if I knew that I could increase my conversion rate 30%, I could demonstrate the ROI of any technology that allowed me to do it just from that alone. But I think that the bigger value is the permission-based access to a veritable treasure trove of rich social profile data. Because when somebody chooses to use one of their identities, they are going to grant you explicit access to certain types of data. So if we use a fictional, mythical person, Anne, we can see here online Anne's profile page from Facebook. Not only do we know that Anne is a female and in a certain age range, but we can get to know her at a much deeper level. We'll know her relationship status, her location, her interests, her photo, find out what she likes. And if Anne on your site is choosing to broadcast some of her activities, either via share a particular piece of content or broadcast out a rating or a review or a recommendation that she's made on a site, she will be granting you access to her friends or social graph. And in certain cases, you can ask for not only their names, but also their interests. And we'll talk a little bit later about how some companies are taking advantage of this, again, all permission-based, to fuel their sales and marketing programs. You know, we just used Facebook as an example, and I think that that's obviously the easiest. And because it is such a huge presence in all of our lives, and from both personally as well as from a business perspective. But I challenge you to think about very few people have only one social profile or are only on just Facebook. We all have different personas on the different networks. So it's easy to look at Facebook and think of it as that's where you go socially. You're reconnecting with friends from present or past, from high school, from college. You're posting photos of your vacation, of your family, of your interests. So it's very much a personal side of you. Contrast that with LinkedIn, where this is your business connections. And while there may be some overlap between LinkedIn and Facebook in terms of your social graph or your connections, it's probably not 100%. I know it isn't for me. And the type of information that I have on LinkedIn is very, very different than what I have on Facebook. It's where my resume is. It's I use a different email because people may be contacting me professionally, and that's not the same as contacting me socially. So, and as big as Facebook is, if you're just thinking about offering Facebook as your sole identity provider from a social login perspective, I think you're missing the boat. And we've seen data we're installed now on over 365,000 websites worldwide. And as much as Facebook is the predominant choice of consumers, it still is only roughly 42% of all logins. So even in the case that it's number one, it's still less than 50%. So you want to be thinking about offering logins from the different social networks, and then taking advantage of the fact that you can merge all of this different information into one authoritative record on the user. This next slide shows just a snapshot of some of the data that's available from these different networks. Another thing to think about if you're considering social login is what is the scope of your prospect or customer or consumer base? If you're a multinational or have global customers, you may want to consider offering social network identity providers that are popular in foreign markets, such as an Orkut from Brazil or a Renren Mixi from China. Again, so that you can acquire more customers, increase the conversion, and grab this data that's going to be so valuable as you start personalizing and changing the user experience. Because by pulling all that information in, getting back to what Valerie was talking about, having the implicit, explicit, and external information, so you develop this 360-degree view. You know what Anne's interests are in terms of music and friends and hobbies. You know where she lives. You know her past behavior on your site through clickstream analysis. You know if she shared out certain things and to whom she shared, and if her shares have resulted in high-value referral traffic and what they've done. You can connect up. She talked about point-of-sale information from a brick-and-mortar presence. You can start pulling all this data to develop the 360-degree view of Anne. And that's where this social profile data and this ability to capture, leverage, and store this information in a central place becomes a game changer, because you now are able to get to what has been promised as this notion of one-to-one marketing. And it's funny because I had an epiphany a couple of months ago, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that I've read about it a bunch of times since then, but I thought it was just my own, but apparently it's not. But, you know, as a marketer, with the advent of the internet, for so many years we've been talking about this kind of holy grail of one-to-one marketing. We're finally going to be able to get to it. And my epiphany was much more on, we're not getting towards it, we're getting closer to going back to it. Valerie kind of touched on it. If you think about the experience that somebody had in a small town 100 or 200 years ago, in this case, Anne would walk into the general store, and that proprietor would immediately know, was Anne married? How old were her children? What were their likes from a food perspective? What kind of cloth did she like if she was making her own clothes? Was it canning time and harvest time, or was it they should offer some new seeds or new whatever? And that was a true one-to-one relationship. With all of this data and with all the technology that is enabling us to take advantage of it, we're getting closer in this mass consumer market that we're living in to that one-to-one. So you're taking this information and feeding it into a recommendation engine, email targeting, ad targeting, CMS, or the like. So again, your site now becomes a truly engaging personal experience for each of those visitors. And that really does start driving us towards the holy grail of marketing, where we can create these incredibly valuable, meaningful relationships with the people who are coming to our website. So with that, I want to turn it back to Valerie to dive a little bit deeper into this.
So we've captured all this data. We know the email address, female, male, married, single, music interests. So how do we use this data? So what I mentioned earlier, it was about integrating with your content management system. It's about creating your website in the way that it can speak directly to your website visitor or to your return visitor. So putting it into practice, there are 5 steps, and one is to develop the customer segments, which is typical in most website development, is developing those personas. Then layered on top of that is understanding the stages of the purchase life cycle. Match and marry the two together to create a holistic view. Create content that matters, and that matters to not only the segment, male, female, 30, 40, but also their buying life cycle, whether or not they're just doing research or they're about to put down their credit card. And number 5 is engage the customer in a real-time, aligned, and unified multi-channel message. So the first step is developing the customer segments, and most marketers understand typical segments based on demographic, sociographic, psychographic. So the first step is to develop the segments that matter to your audience. The next step is to understand the segments of the purchase cycle. So marrying the segments against each stage of their customer's life in the purchase cycle. So the first stage is basically needs recognition. So this is probably a first-time visitor to the site. The next stage is information search, where they start searching customer reviews. Maybe they put a posting on Facebook. Maybe they go out and they look at the chat rooms. The next step is evaluating the options. That's where they would use a price compare. The next step is the purchase decision, and then engagement, and that's really the onboarding or the post-purchase. And at each stage in those buying cycles, the content that the website visitor is looking for is different. And as Forrester points out here, in each of these stages, awareness, consideration, preference, action, loyalty, the user is looking for different information, advertisements, viral videos, microsites, widgets, customer reviews. So what's important for your site is that when you marry the customer segments with the stage of buying life cycle, that's where you're delivering the truly personalized, relevant information. So it's not just about delivering baby pictures to a mom-to-be on the website, but it's also understanding that she's about ready to buy her stroller, so let's deliver the information that's going to make her act and put down her credit card. So here's some simple examples. Is a person comes to a website. This is a hypothetical website, BikeWorld. So when they come to the website, they click on the mountain lion. The next time they visit the site, we know, we've cookied them, and we know that they have a strong interest in the mountain lion. So the next step is to really deliver them the information that's going to help make their purchase decision. So detailed information and detailed specs. Then when they dig deeper in the site, or they come to the site for a third time, we know that through their purchase decision life cycle, they're ready to buy. Let's give them the information to make buying easy. I'm going to pass it over to Bill, and he can give another example of how the social profile data use is used with Sears.
Thanks, Val. Yeah, this is an actual example of what's going on, and it's interesting from 2 perspectives, and we'll talk a little bit later in a non-retail example. So for those of you online who aren't retailers, we have some other good examples as well. But with Sears, the first thing they're doing is personalizing exactly like Val was just describing. So as Roger comes in, because he's signed in with Facebook, and he's granted the permissions, Sears knows that he has certain interests. And so in this case, he says he loves the movie The English Patient. Now as he comes to mysears.com, he's being given the opportunity to purchase the English Patient movie poster because they have seen that that's an interest of his. And that's a nice example of tying into the interest to make recommendations and personalize the experience. But they've taken it another step further, which I find really interesting. It's not only that they know what Roger's interests are, but because he's granted permission to his social graph, they know that, as an example, Kelly may have a birthday next week. And so because they know Kelly's birthday and they know that she likes yoga, they may make some gift suggestions to Roger to say, hey, Kelly's birthday's coming up. You may want to get her a yoga mat or this nice outfit that she could use while exercising. So they're taking advantage of this profile information that's available because of the social login, and now creating a very personalized, unique experience, and helping Roger out because he doesn't have to remember that it's her birthday and wonder what he should get for her. So, Val, I'd love to have you go over the Globe Bank.
So again, this is an example of in the B2B world. So what we've seen historically is personalization is generally been used today in the B2C world about delivering products and information that are relevant to the consumer. But really, I think what's happening now and what's really creating a lot of push from what we're seeing at eDynamic is a lot of organizations are recognizing that in the B2B world, the website can act very nicely as your digital salesperson. So the B2B space is more challenging, but prospects can still be engaged on a very personal level. So here's an example of Globe Bank. They've come to the site and they've been presented with a lot of different information about growing their business, improving processes, and reducing costs. So once they click on reducing costs, that information is stored in their cookie. Now we know that that's a key push point for them. So when they've come to the site for a second time, we present them with only reduced cost savings. They've indicated to us that's what they're looking for. Let's provide that information to them. And then if they've logged in with Generate's social profile data, we've captured their email address. Or if they've downloaded a white paper, again, we've captured their email address. That now becomes a very warm lead. And that's what I was talking about in the whole stage of their buying life cycle. You don't want to provide your salespeople in the B2B world, your salespeople with anonymous people or people that you don't really know a lot about. You just have their email address that have just come to your site. They're not going to be very happy if you start blasting them with emails when you really don't know a lot about them. But if they've come to your site for 3 times, they've indicated to you by their actions that they're very interested in your product. They've downloaded a white paper, provided you with their email address. Now they're a warm lead. Once that lead is acquired, you can dump it into your automated email program like an Eloqua or a Marketo. And then from that point, it could even be dumped into your sales force. And then it's a warm lead that your salespeople can act on and call. And that salesperson now knows the person's name. With social profile data, they know where they live. They know their interests. There's a ton of information so that when somebody calls you up, it's not an anonymous call. It doesn't really feel like an unwarranted or unsolicited phone call because the person on the other end has a lot of information and they could present very relevant and personalized information. So what this just shows is that over the years, the whole idea of what the website is has changed. And, you know, back in 1995, I was building websites in 1995. It was really about brochureware. It's about delivering information that, brochures and information that people are interested in finding. In the 2000s, websites became transactional, e-commerce. There was more interaction between people. Then in the late 2000s, the web became the primary engagement channel for customers. And we've seen all kinds of data about the pre-buying research, 80% or higher is done online in the online world. Now in 2011 plus, what we're talking about is persuasive websites. And it's about where we give the experience and the control to the visitor, and that we make sure that the website aligns to their expectations and leads them to the next steps. So the result of a persuasive website is relevant content that meets the customer experience expectation, creates a two-way dialogue, drives commitment, and generates leads and increased revenue. So really, it's about taking the website visitor and turning them into real people and really delivering what they want to see or what they've come to your website for. And now I'll pass it back to Bill, and he'll give some real-life examples of some work that Jan Rain has done with the Universal Music Group.
Thanks, Val. As you said, I want to just touch a little bit on Universal Music Group because I think it's interesting. We've used a lot of examples during the course of the conversation today on retail, but clearly Universal Music Group is not a traditional retailer as most people would define it. You think about their business model. I mean, they have approximately 400 musical talent and acts under management. And each of these acts have their own unique personality, characteristic, and fan base. And so they've got each of these performers have their own website. And those websites are going to be very, very different in tone and content based on the type of music, the type of fan, and that sort of thing. And so Universal was looking for how could they personalize the experience of a fan coming to each of these different sites, but also retain some information about these people because as consumers, we each have varied interests. So you may like Madonna and Matthew Morrison and U2 and Lady Gaga and Justin Bieber and 50 Cent. Those span multiple different genres. And if you go to each of those sites, you want to have a genre-specific or artist-specific experience, but there's some information about you as a person that can transfer as you go across each of those different sites. And so what Universal did is implemented social login. So they started grabbing all this information, and they're using it in some unique ways. So for example, if I were to go to the U2 site, and they would recognize immediately that I was from Portland, Oregon, and potentially U2 has got a West Coast tour going on, and so I get served up content offering me, because I'm such a big fan, early access or VIP access to tickets that are in Seattle. Whereas my cousin who lives outside of Detroit, where U2 is not going to be in the area, may get served up completely different content around access to interviews or exclusive audio or video. The other thing that they're doing is looking at game mechanics where they're rewarding people for specific behavior on the site and as a way to foster engagement and loyalty to the specific artist. So in this case, as you see on the screen, this user, Melissa McSee, is a big fan of Matthew Morrison, and she's done the things like rate the newest album and share the latest video and comment on the chat function so many times that she has now been awarded the Entourage badge, and she's climbing up the ranks of the biggest fans, and that means something to her, and it's keeping her coming back. By doing that, they're able to create a very loyal brand advocate, in this case for Matthew Morrison, and an engaged user. And we see this across all different types of industry segments where the idea is to get the people coming back, spending more time, interacting with the brand on a much deeper level, and they're able to do that because of personalization. So at this point, I just want to give you a quick overview of Jan Rain. We helped write the original specifications and libraries around how social login works. We took that and recognized the importance of leveraging and storing the data that comes with a social login, and have been helping out companies and large brands deploy this type of technology so that they can create the much more meaningful relationship with their users. So we're helping them acquire more users, learn about them, and drive deeper engagement. Valerie?
And eDynamic is a digital consultancy, and we're an international agency that helps clients acquire and engage customers through cutting-edge interactive solutions. So we're partners with the likes of Sitecore Content Management, Ectron. We're also strong Eloqua, Silverpop, automated marketing partners. And we've been around since 1999. We work with companies across many different verticals and many different countries, and we've got some great clients on our roster that we do a lot of website implementations, digital strategy, social media strategy, automated marketing, and really we're all about one-to-one marketing and about delivering personal dynamic websites. And we're also partners with Jan Rain, because Jan Rain capabilities really complement very nicely with dynamic content management systems and automated marketing. So I guess we'll pass it back to Michael.
Great, thanks Valerie and Bill. This content is very relevant for interactive marketers who are focused on tailoring user experiences to deepen engagement and improve conversion. So really appreciate you two taking the time. We do have some time left to address questions, and I noticed that several have filtered in from the audience, so I want to take the opportunity to give Valerie and Bill both an opportunity to address them. First question came in from Chris, who asked, and this was for you, Valerie, what's the best way to determine buying cycle stages for unique visitors based on their behaviors or actions? Is it purely based on dropping cookies?
Yes, well, it's about cooking the user based on their activity on the site and what they did before they got to the site. So if they, went 4 clicks deep into your site, there's a significant interest. Or if they've been to your site 4 times, that they're much higher up in the buying life cycle. So what is important is for you to understand who your customer is and how they buy, create that segment, and then decide what attributes of behavior the user does, which that would help you determine what segment they belong to. So for example, if they left your site and went to a review site, they're probably in that just before pre-buying stage. So they're probably really close to buying. So there's an indication that they probably belong to that segment. I hope that answered your question. So the net is really based on their activity of the site, and then you have to set up a segment and determine exactly what kind of characteristics that segment is made up of.
Excellent, thanks Valerie. So shifting gears then to discuss more explicit data, Anna asked the question, how accurate and current is social profile data typically? So this is data that users would grant access to from their social network profile. Bill, do you want to address this one?
Sure. I think in the grand scheme of things, compared to all the data that we as marketers are able to collect, it's extremely accurate, because when you think about it, think about your own actions on a social network. On LinkedIn, I want to have the most recent information about my job and responsibilities and contact information. On Facebook, I'm not going to have false information, because my wife and children are my friends and my friends are my friends. So I can't get away with having inaccurate information on Facebook. And the other part about social login from a technology perspective is every single time the user comes to your site and logs in, it's refreshing that data. So if emails change or phone numbers change or anything else does, you're getting the most recent up-to-date information.
Great, and a follow-up question to that from Cindy. How comfortable are people generally with providing explicit personal information about themselves to a website or to a brand?
You know, I'll make some general statements because clearly I can't answer for every single consumer out there. There's a couple of different ways to look at it. I think one is some of it is generational based, so the millennials are much more comfortable sharing than, say, Gen Y or Gen X or baby boomers. But that being said, what we have found in practice working with our clients is the most successful way to approach this is what we would call progressive permissioning. So when somebody first uses their social ID to log in, only ask for that information that's pertinent for what they need to do at that moment. So if it's just a registration, all you really need is email and basic demographic information. Now, if later they want to share an activity out to their Twitter feed or to their Facebook wall and share it with potentially specific friends, then clearly you're going to ask for permission to get the list of friends so that they have the ability to choose who those friends are that they're going to share with. But at that point, the user is in the moment, understands social profile data, and has a trust in you as a brand and is willing to grant it to you. So the best practice is to build that trust so that when you ask for that additional couple pieces, the consumer is much more likely to grant you that permission.
Great, thanks, Bill. We had another question for both Bill as well as you, Valerie, from Josh, who asked, you shared several examples of how retailers such as Sears and Amazon offer personalized experiences. Curious how companies in other industries such as media and entertainment or consumer goods are also effectively utilizing personalization today on their websites. Do you want to start, Valerie, and then we'll push that over to Bill and see if he has anything to add?
Yeah, well, a couple quick examples. Some great ones is that American Express, they're both consumer and business, so maybe that applies to both. But what American Express, they've introduced Link Like Love. So basically, when you log into the American Express Facebook page, you're asked to provide your credit card information. A lot of information. Some people are a little bit leery about that. But what they get in return is they get offers based on what they've liked. So, you know, I think that's a part of an answer to the previous question is, you know, how likely are people going to give up their information? Well, if they get something of value in return, they're likely to give up information. So for the example of American Express, once you've logged in with your credit card information, you get great offers from all the companies and organizations and brands that you've liked. So really nice return on profile data and segmentation. Not only does American Express get a deeper understanding of what you like and love, but you in return as the consumer or as the business person gets offers that are truly relevant to you. Another example is Rotten Tomatoes. It's the movie review site. If you go in there, you can find out who of your friends on Facebook actually like a movie. Adds some significant extra value to that whole personalization element of the site. And again, you get something of great value for logging in with Facebook on that site.
I'll give another example, Michael. The Washington Post is serving up articles and content from their archives and current to people based on the interest that they have admitted to in Facebook.
Great. So question from Brandon, who asked, my company stores user data in a bunch of different locations. What's the best way to consolidate that data into a central repository so we can, you know, ultimately better market to our customers? Bill, I'll start with you on that one.
Okay, I mean, I'm not going to get into, you know, the best technical way, you know, because clearly every single IT infrastructure is going to be different, and the choices of software and hardware are going to be different. But I think that the better answer on this is the intent from Brandon. What we find with our clients is a huge imperative to truly personalizing and driving those unique and engaging user experiences is the fact that there are so many silos of information and so many different registration systems and databases. And I think what the goal should be, and what everybody should start looking at, is getting all of that information into a central repository that combines the implicit, explicit, and external data that Valerie talked about earlier, and then use that either as the engine that drives everything or the repository that then ships out the relevant information to the CMS or the recommendation engine or the personalization engine or the email application or whatever third-party app it is. But I think the most important thing is in order to truly get this kind of engaging, personalized experience, you have to consolidate all those disparate sources of data into one central repository. Val, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, just to add in, what we've generally recommended if users are starting from scratch is to store their data in their email client like Eloqua. That way it remains the prospect database, and then when it's warm, then it gets dumped into the CRM system. Typically the CMS is not really the best place to store that information. It only stores the lighter information, and then when the information is accumulated, it actually becomes a person with a profile. Then it's put into the automated marketing system. So that's been our experience, but our experience is definitely from a pure digital perspective, from grabbing a lead online, following up via email, and then the third tier is following up via a phone call or face-to-face.
Hey Valerie, switching gears a little bit, a question came in from Tricia who asked, what's the best way to align content to different stages in my prospect's buying cycle? Do you have any thoughts or best practices related to that?
Well, typically what the websites, the companies that we work with, they typically try to start slow. So the easiest place to start is with a carousel or the homepage banner that's up. And the reason why I say that is because it's fairly easy to change and it's fairly easy to build dynamically. So I would start with using that banner carousel. So for example, the third-time visitor who's indicated they're all about saving money, the banner for them would be, a saving money opportunity. Then the next stage, after you've perfected that, then I would potentially use the right rail. For example, the right rail becomes the place where you store the relevant white papers or the relevant information or the relevant resources or customer reviews. So it's about setting places on your site, using your CMS template to structure it, and then starting to build up the site bit by bit. And in addition to that is not only starting slow with dynamically presenting the information, is starting slow with building out your segments. So I would start with only 2 segments, for example, across 4 different buying cycles, or maybe only start with a few, research, about to buy. And then that way it doesn't become too complex. And then when you've perfected that, then you can go a bit deeper. And then you could, for example, turn your site into all sunshine if you're from California, for example. So again, it's setting up templates and structures to dynamically build, but only utilizing the dynamic capability in a slow fashion until you've perfected it.
Great, thanks Valerie. We did have another question that came in from Michelle who asked, a recent news article discussed some potential logic flaws with social login related to security. Bill, would you like to comment on that and the security and data privacy aspects of social login?
Sure. I mean, I guess I'd start off with, as a provider of this technology, Generain takes our role in preserving the integrity and security and privacy of data and identities as probably our job one most important thing. We take it very, very seriously. As I mentioned earlier, we were a founding member of the OpenID Foundation and helped write a lot of the libraries that have gone into what has now become social login. And we take a very proactive role in security and privacy. In the case where Michelle referenced a recent news article. It's a little bit interesting in that, and actually a little bit of a textbook way that flaws should be identified and dealt with. In this case, there were a couple of researchers who last summer identified a couple of obscure cases where there could be problems. They came to each of the companies, Google, Facebook, Janrain, and others, with their findings prior to making it public. They had identified 8 different flaws, only 2 of which actually pertain to Janrain technology. We fixed those things, each of those 2 issues immediately, and had a fix out to our customers long before any of this information was made public, which is just textbook the way that you want these things to happen. I mean, unfortunately, you don't want any flaws, but it's a fact of life that sometimes they do happen. And so when we identify them, we fix them very quickly. At the time that the researchers identified these things, there was not one single case where any security or privacy of any individual had been compromised, and the issues are now resolved and fixed. So the information is coming to light now because the researchers are going to present a paper here in May detailing their work. But as far as our customers are concerned, there's no exposure whatsoever right now. And again, getting back to what I touched on earlier, the security and privacy around social login is, I feel, much stronger than if each individual brand creates their own registration system and stores username and passwords, because even the best companies, if they don't have the resources, are going to be exposed. I mean, Zappos is a recent example, whereas Google and Facebook have huge teams of brilliant people that are focused on protecting the privacy and security of that information. And so I'd rather trust them than a smaller brand that doesn't have those resources.
Excellent. Thanks, Bill. So it looks like we are pretty close to the top of the hour. Valerie and Bill, thanks so much for sharing these insights, and thank you, everyone, for attending and your really great questions. If we didn't have time to answer your question, we will be sure to follow up with you offline. And as a quick reminder, please do keep an eye out for a link to the webinar recording tomorrow. So on behalf of Valerie at eDynamic and Bill at Janrain, thanks again, everyone, for your participation. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.